Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our series where we are looking to assist Germany in reconquering some of these lost lands. We're in a bit of a sticky situation right now where the US has moved a lot of troops onto the Western European front, which isn't exactly what we want to be seeing, but at the same time, well, we've got to do what we can to assist with anything at all possible. And yeah, we're not looking super hot at this point in time, as Britain is moving a lot of troops around and kind of encompassing Germany. They're in a really tight spot. I'm doing okay by all senses of the word, but it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle to regain control of the situation in Europe. So let's go ahead and make a couple of purchases here. A nice thing that we have is over here in Caucasus, we were able to retain the factory that we purchased here. So what we'll honestly start doing is funneling as many infantry out of this factory as we can so we can get some manpower and defense and defensive strength started over in the Eastern Europe portion. So let's go ahead and get 4 of those guys that we can drop in here. As we've discussed previously, we're going to also churn out 3 tanks from our Manchuria factory. From here, I'm going to go ahead and get 1 more fighter. And then from our other base here, let's go ahead and get 2 more infantry and an artillery. We can place an artillery and an infantry here, and then that last infantry unit we will produce out of the mainland. So that's going to be what we do purchase-wise. All right, so we've got quite a few movements that we are trying to make to assist Germany as best we can and kind of pull some of the pressure off of them. So the primary thing that we're going to be looking to do here is there's just a solitary bomber hanging out in Archangel. So we will go ahead and move a few of our units from Evenki National or Kurg over here to combat that bomber. It really shouldn't be that difficult as bombers defend very terribly. We will also be moving our tank from Vologda down through Novobrisk and Kazaka SSR to recapture those areas there. We've got a bunch of our different units moving in from both the south and the east over here to retake Xinjiang as well as Sichuan. Sichuan I'm overkilling a little bit, but honestly, I just want to not have to deal with this at all and kind of block out any movements that the Russians might make to hopefully retake this. We're pulling in some support from our bombers in this raid in Xinjiang, but we will be bringing in a couple of additional units as we blitz some of our tanks up through West Russia and into, it looks like Belarus, in hopefully liberating this area. It shouldn't be that difficult as we're bringing in a couple of tanks as well as a bomber to assure that we can take out the solitary infantry from Britain that's hanging out here. But that's going to do it for our combat movement phase, so let's go ahead and get into the actual battles. So first off, we have the battle in Xinjiang. This should be a pretty one-sided battle, and hopefully we can get all of their units taken down within this first set of turns. We've got 1 hit coming from our artillery infantry combo, and as long as one of these 3 units hits, we will be good to go. No hits from the tanks, but we do get the final hit we need from our bomber, making this a 1-turn round, and no casualties taken on the returning fire, which is always nice to see. Our next set of combat will be here in Sichuan, which is going to be very much more one-sided. We've got 6 total units rolling at a 2 power, and that's more than enough hits to fully take out these infantry and artillery that are bunkered down. So let's go ahead and see. No casualties taken back here either, which is certainly much appreciated. All right, now for one of the more dicey combat rolls in this turn, the fight in Archangel. Again, that bomber doesn't have much of a chance to defend. I've just got to land a hit, hopefully, with one of my artillery or infantry here. And we do get the hit that we need. and no return fire from that bomber, which is not a huge surprise as they defend terribly. And finally, we've got the combat in Belarus, and this should be decently one-sided. I'm hoping to not take any casualties, but if we do, we will certainly be taking one of those tanks. But no casualties taken in any of our combat rounds so far, or at all in this turn, which is always appreciated. Alright, well, we didn't take any casualties this round, but inflicted some very heavy casualties across not only Russia, but also a net loss to the US in the form of their bomber taken out, and a couple of units from Great Britain, which is always nice to see. Alright, so in terms of the non-combat moves that we'll be doing, I've got my transports looping around to pick up any remaining units that we had on the mainland here, to drop them off in Kiangsu, where they will ultimately be doing more use to me than they would over here in the mainland, as I don't have any immediate threat, even looming, from the US, so I'm not concerned about anything really happening over here. Additionally, we're moving any and all troops that we can from here up in this general direction. The artilleries that I had will have to lay over in Persia. There is an artillery that was left in Persia that we can get over to Caucasus, as well as moving every single fighter that I have into Caucasus. And I do have to fortify one of my bombers, or a few of my bombers back down here as well. But the bombers have some more range, and I like to keep them further away from the danger where at all possible. The last move that I made is further enforcing the land that we've recaptured in Archangel with the remaining units that we had over in Evenki National Orkurg. So that is really about all I need to do as a non-combat on this turn. So let's move to our placement phase. Alright, so as planned, we've dumped a bunch of infantry here in Caucasus. We've dropped an infantry, a tank, we've dropped an infantry, an artillery, and a fighter down here out of the Calcutta factory. And then over here in our Manchuria factory, we've manufactured 3 more tanks and placed another lone infantry over here in the mainland factory, which nets us about all we needed to do on this turn, which leaves us sitting quite pretty as we increased our national output up to 56 for this next turn, which is going to be really nice to work with. All right, we've got a big, nasty fight happening in Germany. The US has officially moved in to clean sweep out the German base, and things are not looking good for the German forces. They're very much overpowered. And Berlin has fallen, which is not what we wanted to see. That nets the US a lot more money to work with on their upcoming turn, which is really bad for everyone. So Russia is bunkering down for what's going to be a very, very nasty fight, and we've got to make a push now before they just further fortify. Germany is not in any place to lend any assistance, which is not what we wanted to see to any degree. Alright, so we've got a lot of capital to work with here. So we're going to do a similar strategy to what we've already been doing. Let's get our 3 tanks to come out of Manchuria, our 4 infantry to dump into Caucasus, and let's see, down here I think I've got to focus on, let's do 2 tanks out of Calcutta and a fighter, which leaves us a single artillery to be manufactured out of the main base. And that's what we'll do units-wise. Alright, so in terms of my combat moves that we'll be doing, we're going to loop one of my tanks up to the Baltic states and Poland to liberate those areas back away from British control. It's not going to do Germany any good, but it's going to hinder Britain on their next turn. We're also looping another tank down through Ukraine SSR and into West Russia to combat this tank here. We're also bringing in one of my bombers from this area in to help with that fight, just so we have the extra firepower. If I have to take the casualty on the bomber, I don't want to, but I'll have to. Every other unit that we can, every tank from Xinjiang, Sichuan, Kazakh SSR, Caucasus, as well as all of my infantry and artillery from Archangel, all supporting planes fighters units from Kaukas, and any other unit that can make it to this battle is going to be helping us for a massive scale battle here in Moscow, which I'm terrified of because they have 21 infantry stockpiled here, but we've got to make that push because Germany has lost Berlin, so we've got to hit Moscow where it hurts. And hopefully we can take away a victory here and regain some of the IPC that we've lost, as well as recapture a victory city, which is direly needed at this point in time. All right, we're jumping right into the big round of combat. This is either going to make or break our run. So let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. Would have been nice for that infantry to hit, but you're going to be the first to go because there's no way we're getting out of this round casualty-free. Moving on, we've got 16 of these rolls coming from our artillery infantry couple, and that nets us 5 hits, which is better than nothing. Moving on to our tank and fighter, I'm looking for some heavy fire coming from these ranks here. So let's see how many of them we end up with. We've got 10 collective hits coming out of this group, which is pretty good. That's well over half of them landing hits successfully, but that's only being funneled further and further into the infantry here. Let's see what our bombers can do. And our bombers net us 2 more hits, which doesn't quite get us through all of the infantry sitting here, but it busts out a decent chunk of them. So let's see how many casualties we're taking on the return fire. Surprisingly, only 8 hits, which is much appreciated on my end, but we're going to have to allocate those strategically. So I'm going to end up taking 3 of those on some of these fighters. And then let's go ahead and take the remainders on some of these artillery here. I didn't want to take as many hits on those fighters as I did, but we've got to reserve some of our manpower to defend Russia once we eventually take the sweep here. And now we've got some hits coming in from our tanks, and all 4 of their tanks are going to hit, which is really not what I wanted to see. So let's go ahead and take a casualty on a tank, a casualty on a fighter, and then 1 more casualty for each of our artillery and our infantry here. Alright, let's go ahead and continue in our attacks. Hopefully this is the last round of combat we'll need to see in this round of the fight. We've got 3 hits. That's going to take out the remainder of their infantry. We've got 12 hits coming in here. If we can get most of them to hit, that should be the end of this fight. And it's going to be, which is nice. Now, let's keep the casualties to a minimum, please. Got 2 hits to reassign here is all, which is nice. So let's go ahead and take 1 on a fighter and 1 on a tank. No, actually, we're going to take 1 on a fighter and 1 on one of our infantry and call that good. And we're going to get a couple more hits from some tanks here. Hopefully not too many, just 2. So let's go ahead and take 1 on an artillery and 1 on a tank. And that will leave us with a decently strong amount of ground units left to defend Moscow. Very, very heavy casualties on both sides. I netted a win of about 10 IPC comparatively. That gives us the win in Moscow and allows us to retain all IPC hoarded by Russia at this point in time. Now for a much smaller scale battle over here in West Russia. Let's see how this one pans out. Hopefully we can get the hit we need here, and we do, and no returning fire from the tank, which is much appreciated, as I've gone way too far down the rabbit hole with casualties already in this round. Well, that was a painful round, but we walked away with the collective victory here. And that gives us a city, specifically the city of Moscow, which is really nice. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and land all of our fighters back down here in Calcutta. And by Calcutta, I mean Caucasus. Let's go ahead and land this bomber back down here in Persia. And land all of these bombers alongside it. Here, I could have sworn that I brought all of you guys in. But let's bring you in to fortify in Russia. Let's then move all of these units up towards the front here. Moving in these tanks as well. We want to start moving these guys in. We'll want to move these units up to defend our units in Calcutta. We'll want to move this guy up as well. We'll go ahead and loop our transport back around to pick up this guy and then drop him back off in Jiangsu. And I think that's all of the units that we really need to move at this point in time, as this guy isn't going to go anywhere. He's actually probably going to meet his match pretty swiftly here by the hand of the US as soon as we end our turn. So let's go ahead and get our new troops mobilized here. Let's drop all 4 of these guys down into Caucasus. Let's land 3 of our tanks here in Manchuria. And then go ahead and mobilize the rest of these tanks. This plane. And then this artillery back at the mainland. And that's going to be all we want to do for this round of our placement. And that's where I'm going to go ahead and stop today's episode, cutting it a little bit shorter because that was a really big battle. But we'll be right back into the action on Tuesday of this next week. So feel free to tune in to that episode to see what retaliation we get from the Allied powers, because it's not going to be pretty, I can tell you that. Thanks again for watching, and you have yourself a fantastic rest of your day.